Good to have you with us on this Sunday evening. I'm Daniel Choy with this hour's news updates. President Park Geun-hye has arrived in Canada on a state visit, the first by a Korean president in 15 years. The first event on the presidential itinerary was seeking the cooperation and support of Korean residents there, from inter-Korean unification to the expansion of trade between Korea and Canada. Our Choi You-sun files us this report from Ottawa.
President Park Geun-hye took her unification drive another step further in Canada. Meeting with representatives of Korean residents in Ottawa, President Park said preparing the two Koreas for reunification is an important task that can no longer be overlooked. She then talked about her efforts to not only prepare the two Koreas for reunification, but also garner international support for it.
한반도 통일의 비전을 캐나다 국민들도 공감할 수 있도록 동포 여러분께서도 많이 노력해 주시고 한 분 한 분이 통일의 전도사가 되어 주시기를 바랍니다.
On the economic front, President Park said Seoul and Ottawa's soon-to-be-signed free trade deal would take their 50-year bilateral relationship to the next level, as current trade and investment projects centered on energy and manufacturing would include the services and cultural industries. The pact, once implemented, would remove tariffs on 99% of traded value over the next 10 years. Acknowledging Korean achievements in Canadian society that have helped strengthen bilateral ties, the president promised various kinds of support for young Korean Canadians to help them excel in mainstream society while maintaining their ethnic identity. President Park officially kicks off her Canada trip on Sunday by meeting with Governor General David Johnston. She will also hold a summit with Prime Minister Stephen Harper, after which the two leaders will sign on the dotted line of the recently concluded free trade agreement. Choi You-sun, ARIRANG News, Ottawa.
Shifting gears to a different story now. Unfazed by strong warnings from North Korea, a group of South Korean activists continue sending anti-Pyongyang leaflets across the border. 10 activists from Fighters for Free North Korea launched 10 big balloons carrying 200,000 leaflets into the sky from Paju on Sunday. The waterproof leaflets contain messages denouncing the three-generation power transfer in the north, as well as the dire economic situation, while praising South Korea's economic prosperity. Most of the group's members are defectors from North Korea. The group's chief vows to continue sending letters of truth until the North Korean people achieve freedom. The group is opposed by another group of activists calling for a suspension of the practice. The South Korea government maintains it has no legal basis to stop leaflet activities by civic groups. Korea's finance minister is making a case for the government's new budget proposal, which contains the biggest spending increase in 7 years, but is aimed at lifting the country out of its current economic slump. Our Kim Hyun-bin has this report.
Korea's finance minister Park Geun-hye says that his goal is to lift Korea's growth rate to 6% and increase government spending to give the country a much-needed jolt out of a prolonged, slow recovery. On the sidelines of the G20 meeting of finance ministers and central bank chiefs in Australia over the weekend, Choi made a case for the government's recently unveiled 2015 budget proposal, which contains a 5.7% spending increase, the biggest in 7 years. Choi said the increase is needed to boost the growth rate and bring about an economic recovery. The pace of recovery has been very slow since the Sarajevo ferry disaster in April. The tragic accident had another tragic consequence, in that consumers and businesses cut spending in its wake, leaving the growth rate in the second quarter at a mere 0.5%. The government spending proposal will result in a $32 billion budget deficit, representing 2.1% of the nation's GDP. But Choi says he expects the spending increase will bring the growth rate back up to 4% by next year. And although the country's debt-to-GDP ratio is expected to increase next year to a record high of 35.7% next year, it's still one-third of the OECD average. The finance minister emphasized that support for businesses is necessary in a stagnant economy such as this, with the increased activity eventually leading to greater revenue. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
The G20 nations have agreed to boost global growth by at least 2% over the next 5 years. The plan was brought up at the G20 meeting of finance ministers and central bank governors in Cairns. The representatives met to discuss the global economic slowdown and ways to stimulate global growth before the G20 summit in November. Australian Treasurer Joe Hockey said a 2% growth target was selected amid more than 900 proposals from individual states. According to the International Monetary Fund, the world economy should increase by 3.4% this year, a cut of 0.3% due to a lack of robust momentum in advanced economies. Back here in the nation, the combined debt of Korean public firms and institutions is expected to hit 524 trillion won or $502 billion next year, amid government efforts to reduce their liabilities. That's 3 trillion won less than a previous government prediction, and the debt ratio is likely to come in at 214% in 2015, according to the Finance Ministry's Financial Management Plan for 2014 to 2018, which will be submitted to the National Assembly on Monday. The shocking debt numbers come on the heels of numerous other reports of rising debt, including an uptick in household debt. According to the Ministry of Strategy and Finance, the rising debt levels will make it difficult for the Korean government to raise the roughly $287 billion in revenue it needs from taxpayers next year. Moving outside of Korea, Islamic State militants are threatening Syria's north-central Kurdish region, forcing thousands to flee as the terrorist group takes down village after village. Meanwhile, some hostages are released as the wife of one man still held in captivity issues a plea in hopes of bringing her husband home safe. Our Shin Se-min has the latest.
The latest advance of Islamic State militants in Syria have prompted calls for help from the Syrian town of Kobani, which is strategically positioned on the border between Syria and Turkey. According to activists, hundreds of Kurdish fighters from Turkey have arrived in the town to join a Kurdish militia fighting to hold off IS forces. On Saturday, nearly 60,000 Syrian Kurds fled to Turkey within a 24-hour period to escape the Islamic State militants' advance. According to Turkey's deputy prime minister, Turkey had previously opened a stretch of the border to Syrian Kurds following a 3-day period in which nearly 60 villages in the region were taken by IS militants. The situation on Syria's Turkish border is unfolding as 49 Turkish hostages held for months in Iraq returned to their homes on Saturday after what Turkey said was a covered operation by its intelligence agency. The list of hostages, including diplomats and their families, had been held captive since June in the Iraqi city of Mosul. The wife of another hostage currently being held by the terrorist group issued a plea to his captor Saturday. Barbara Henning, the wife of British aid worker Ellen Henning, who has been threatened with execution by the group, described him as a peaceful, selfless man who was only trying to help Syrians in need. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Moving on to the world of cinema, a great director, actors, and a solid script are and always will be the key ingredients to making great films. But in this day and age, it doesn't hurt to fully utilize other modern means to enhance movie magic. Just as Korea's movie industry is advancing, so is innovation and artistry in the field of special effects makeup. Our Kim Ji-yeon has more.
Movie makeup artists play a crucial role in films such as Eun-gyo, in which 37-year-old Park Geun-hye plays a man who ages into his 70s. It took almost 8 hours to transform him to realistically create the sophisticated senior he portrays. Korean makeup effects artists challenged themselves further, making a teenager look like an 80-year-old man. 13-year-old actor Cho Sung-mok, who played a teenage boy with the aging disease progeria in the film My Brilliant Life, had to go through a process that took hours to complete every time he sat in the makeup chair. They enlisted techniques innovated by Hollywood special makeup artist Greg Canham to create natural-looking wrinkles and age spots under a thin silicone mask.
Real progeria patients can look unsightly, so we tried to maintain the actor's cute, childlike image.
The makeover not only raised the movie's believability level, but also chose acting.
I think Cho Sung-mok is an amazing kid. He never complained even when he had to go through the age makeup process for 5 hours every day.
My Brilliant Life has shown makeup techniques similar to those used in the award-winning blockbuster The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. That film amazed audiences as its lead, Brad Pitt, played a character that aged backwards, from an old man to a baby. With the development of Korean filmmaking and special effects, industry watchers expect local movies to stand shoulder to shoulder with those made in Hollywood. Kim Jeong, ARIRANG News.
For now, Koreans are crazy about sports more than movies. Korean athletes seem to have a knack for sporting events that require pinpoint accuracy. This Sunday, the sharpshooting trio of Jin Jong-ho, Lee Dae-myung, and Kim Chung-yong bagged more gold for Korea at the Asian Games in the men's 10-meter air pistol team event with an aggregate 1,744 points. The bright spark for Team Korea was 17-year-old sensation Kim Chung-yong, who racked up 585 points, helping the team's victory after winning his own individual 10-meter pistol gold en route to becoming the youngest Korean Asian Games gold medalist. Reigning Olympic gold medalist Jin redeemed himself with 581 points after a disappointing 7th-place finish in the 50-meter pistol individual event. And looking ahead, swimmer Park Tae-hwan will seek to defend his Asian Games crown against China's rising star Sun Yang in the 200-meter freestyle finals coming up at 7 p.m. Korea time. Korea currently just recently went down to 2nd place in the medal standings with 7 gold, 6 silver, and 6 bronze. China just overtook Korea for the top spot with 8 gold. Mongolia, a distant 3rd with 2 gold. Now the weather. Relatively fair conditions can be expected on Monday in Incheon, where the Asian Games are in full swing. More than 150 millimeters of rain are expected to fall on areas surrounding Mount Chiri in the south and the mountainous areas of Jeju Island between Tuesday and Wednesday due to the indirect effects of Typhoon Fengwang. And now let's take a look at the weather conditions elsewhere around the world. Well, that's all from us for now. We have more news coming up at 10 p.m. Korea time, and those who are cheering for your individual or respective teams for the Asian Games, happy cheering.